Have you ever stopped contacting a woman and suddenly felt like you'd accidentally launched a social experiment? One day, you're sending messages. The next day, you decide to relax, put your phone down, and focus on your own life. And somehow, that's when things start getting interesting. Maybe she suddenly becomes the first person to view every story you post. Not one story, every story. Even the boring one of your breakfast that nobody should be watching. Maybe she sends a random message that looks innocent on the surface. Hey, just one word. A word so simple, yet powerful enough to make a grown man stare at his phone like he's decoding ancient treasure maps. Or maybe she becomes completely silent. Nothing. No texts. No calls. No likes. No signs of life, which somehow feels even louder than a message. Now, before we continue, let's be clear. This video isn't about playing games. It's not about manipulation. And it's definitely not about pretending you're busy while checking your phone every 17 seconds. We've all met people who say, "I'm not thinking about them anymore," while secretly refreshing Instagram like they're monitoring the stock market. What we're talking about today is something much more interesting. Human nature. Because when you stop contacting someone, you remove the noise. Their reaction often reveals what was there all along. So what does a woman actually do when you stop reaching out? Does she miss you? Forget you? Get curious? Or does she do something that most men completely misunderstand? Stay with me until number 1, because it's one of the most common reactions women have, and it's the reaction that confuses men the most. Before we begin, take a second to like the video, subscribe to the Elegant Standard, and share this with someone who's ever stared at their phone wondering, what is she thinking? Now, let's begin. Number 1, she pretends not to notice. The first thing many women do when you stop contacting them is surprisingly simple. They pretend absolutely nothing happened. No text, no phone call, no dramatic message saying, "Why haven't you contacted me?" Nothing. And this is usually where many men make their first mistake. After 3 days of silence, they start creating entire documentaries in their heads. She doesn't care. It's over. She's already forgotten me. Meanwhile, she's sitting there thinking, interesting. You see, silence doesn't always mean indifference. Sometimes, silence means observation. She's paying attention, watching, waiting, trying to figure out whether your disappearance is intentional or whether you simply got distracted by life, or perhaps distracted by one of those online videos that starts with a cooking recipe and somehow ends with a man building a castle in the middle of a jungle. It happens. The point is that she doesn't want to react too quickly. Why? Because nobody likes looking desperate, especially when they're not even sure what's happening yet. Think about it. If someone suddenly changes their behavior, most people don't immediately rush in demanding answers. They observe first. They gather information. They become detectives without the badge. And women are often very good at this. She may notice your absence far sooner than you realize. She simply isn't announcing it. That's what confuses so many men. They assume that because she's quiet, she's unaffected. But those are not the same thing. A person can be completely silent and still be very curious. In fact, curiosity often grows in silence. Because when communication disappears, questions begin to appear. And sometimes those questions become impossible to ignore. But pretending not to notice is only the beginning. Because what she does next is where things start becoming truly interesting. And that's when the real clues begin to appear. Number 2, she starts checking your social media. Now, let's talk about one of the most common reactions after you stop contacting her. Suddenly, your social media becomes very interesting. And I mean very interesting. For weeks, she may have barely noticed your online existence. Do you post a photo? Nothing. Do you share a story? Silence. You upload a picture of yourself looking like you just won an award for most average Tuesday ever. Still nothing. Then you stop reaching out, and somehow, like magic, your story views start appearing again. Coincidence? Maybe, but maybe not. You see, Human beings are naturally curious creatures. The moment something becomes less available, it often becomes more interesting. It's the same reason people ignore a book for months and suddenly want to read it the moment someone else borrows it. Mystery has a strange effect on the mind. When communication stops, questions begin. What is he doing? Why did he stop? Is he busy? Did he lose interest? Is there someone else? Before long, checking your profile becomes the easiest way to gather information without asking a single question. No awkward conversations. There is no risk of rejection. Just a quick little investigation. Of course, nobody likes admitting they're curious. That's why social media is the perfect detective tool. 1 minute, she's scrolling casually. The next minute, she's somehow looking at a vacation photo you posted 8 months ago. A photo even you forgot existed. At that point, your profile has become less of a social media account and more of a research project. But here's where many men get carried away. One story view doesn't mean wedding bells are ringing. One like doesn't mean she's writing your name in a diary surrounded by hearts. It simply means something caught her attention. Attention is often the first sign of curiosity. But social media checking isn't the strongest clue. Not even close. Because the next behavior reveals something much deeper than curiosity. And that's where things become truly interesting. Number 3, she mentions you indirectly. Now, this is where things start becoming a little more creative, because not every woman is going to contact you directly. Some prefer a much safer strategy. Instead of asking about you, they somehow manage to bring you up without bringing you up. It's actually impressive when you think about it. One day, she's talking with a mutual friend and casually asks, "Oh, how's he doing these days?" Notice the wording. Not "I miss him." Not "tell him I said hello." Just a simple, innocent question. The kind of question that looks harmless on the surface. But underneath it is a tiny fishing expedition. She's gathering information. And the best part, if anyone notices, she can always pretend she was just curious. Of course, I'm just curious. The same way people accidentally end up looking at photos from 2019. Sometimes, she'll mention a place you both visited, a joke you once shared, a movie you recommended, or some random topic that somehow circles back to you. Coincidence? Maybe. But when someone keeps finding creative ways to bring up the same person, it's usually because that person is still occupying space in their mind. Now, let's be mature about this. This doesn't automatically mean she's deeply in love. It doesn't mean she's planning your future together. It simply means you're still relevant enough to be discussed. And relevance matters, because people rarely spend energy talking about things they've completely forgotten. What's fascinating is that indirect communication feels safer. There's no vulnerability, no risk. It's not an awkward moment if the feelings aren't mutual. She gets information while protecting her pride. It's a strategy that many people use, not just women. Because, let's face it, most human beings would rather investigate quietly than walk straight into uncertainty. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because while some women become subtle investigators, others respond in a completely different way. And what they do next catches many men completely off guard. Number 4, she suddenly looks busier than ever. Now, this reaction is one of the most entertaining to watch. You stop contacting her. A few days pass. Suddenly, she appears to be living the most exciting life in human history. Every day there's a new photo, a new restaurant, a new outing, a new adventure, a new smiling picture with captions that practically scream, "Look how amazing my life is." Meanwhile, you're sitting at home wondering whether she secretly won the lottery. Last week, she posted twice a month. Now, she's uploading enough content to qualify as a travel documentary. Of course, sometimes this is completely genuine. Maybe she's actually busy. Maybe she's focusing on friends, family, work, and enjoying life. That's healthy. That's normal. But sometimes something else is happening. When someone pulls away unexpectedly, pride often steps into the room. Nobody enjoys feeling rejected. Nobody enjoys feeling uncertain. One of the easiest ways to protect your ego is to show the world that you're doing perfectly fine, even if you're still processing things privately. It's human nature. People don't usually post photos of themselves staring at the ceiling at AM wondering what happened. They post the vacation, the party, the fancy coffee, the sunset, the version of life that says, "Everything is great over here." And to be fair, sometimes everything really is great, but the sudden increase in activity can occasionally be a subtle message, a way of saying, "I'm doing just fine," whether anyone asked or not. The funny part is that both men and women do this. Human beings have been trying to look unaffected since the beginning of time. We just have better cameras now. But here's what many people don't realize. Looking busy and being busy are not always the same thing. The next reaction reveals far more than any photo, caption, or story ever could. What happens next is the one reaction that catches most men completely off guard. Number 5. She sends a random message. Now, we arrive at one of the most confusing moments for men. The random message. You haven't heard from her in days, maybe weeks. You've accepted the silence. You've focused on your own life. You've even convinced yourself you've moved on. Then suddenly, your phone lights up, and there it is. Hey, just 3 letters. 3 innocent-looking letters are capable of causing more overthinking than a university exam. Immediately, your brain starts working overtime. What does it mean? Why now? Is she interested? Is she bored? Did she accidentally text me? Did her cat step on the phone? The truth is usually much simpler. Sometimes she genuinely wants to reconnect. Sometimes she's curious. Sometimes she misses the conversations. And sometimes she simply wants to see if the connection is still there. That's why these messages often sound casual. How have you been? I saw something that reminded me of you. Hope you're doing well. Notice how none of these messages say, "I've been thinking about you." That would require vulnerability. Vulnerability makes most human beings nervous. Instead, the message arrives wearing a disguise. It looks casual, friendly, harmless, but beneath the surface, it's often opening a door, a small invitation to see whether communication can start again. The funny part is how much effort people put into sounding effortless. Someone spends 10 minutes deciding whether to send hey or hi. Then, they pretended they didn't think about it at all. Human nature is fascinating. Now, let's be mature here. A random message doesn't automatically mean deep romantic feelings. It doesn't guarantee attraction. It simply shows initiative. It shows that for one reason or another, she decided to reach out instead of remaining silent. And that's significant, because people rarely contact someone who never crosses their mind. But here's the interesting part. As revealing as a random message can be, it still isn't the strongest indication of interest. Not even close. Because number 6 reveals something much deeper, and it's one of the clearest signs of all. Number 6, she tests your availability. Now, we arrive at one of the most revealing reactions of all, the availability test. And the funny thing is, most men don't even realize it's happening. You think you're having a normal conversation. Meanwhile, she's quietly collecting information like a detective in a luxury suit. You see, after you've stopped contacting her, a few questions naturally begin to appear. Is he still interested? Would he answer if I reached out? Has he moved on? Is there someone else? The problem is that asking those questions directly feels risky. Most people don't enjoy putting their feelings on the table and waiting for judgment. So instead, they test, subtly, a casual message, a random comment, a reaction to a story, a small opportunity to observe your response. Because your response tells a story. Do you reply immediately? Do you seem happy to hear from her? Do you sound distant? Do you seem completely unaffected? Without realizing it, you're often answering questions she never actually asked. It's a bit like a job interview where nobody tells you it's an interview. You thought you were just drinking coffee. Meanwhile, you're being evaluated. The mature way to understand this is simple. She's not necessarily playing games. She's gathering information. Human beings do this all the time. Before taking emotional risks, people want clues. They want reassurance. They want some indication that they're not walking into a closed door. And honestly, that's understandable. Nobody enjoys rejection. Not men. Not women. Not even people who pretend they don't care. What's fascinating is that these tests are often less about controlling you and more about reducing uncertainty, because uncertainty makes people uncomfortable. But here's where things become truly interesting. Not every woman sends a message. Not every woman checks your profile. Not every woman tests your availability. Some women choose a completely different path, and that next reaction may be the most misunderstood one of all. Number 7, she completely disappears. Now we come to the reaction that drives many men absolutely crazy, because sometimes, nothing happens. No text, no call, no likes, no story views, no mysterious messages, nothing. It's as if she vanished into another dimension. For many men, this is the hardest reaction to understand, because at least when someone does something, you have something to analyze. But when someone does absolutely nothing, your imagination starts working overtime. Suddenly, you're creating theories that belong in a detective movie. She must hate me. No, she's trying to make me miss her. No, she's probably forgotten I exist. No, she's secretly testing me. At some point, you're no longer reading signals. You're writing fiction. The truth is that silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of communication, because silence can mean completely different things. Sometimes, she has genuinely moved on. She's focused on her life, her goals, her future, and she's no longer emotionally invested in what happens next. That's a possibility. But sometimes silence means something entirely different. Sometimes, she's waiting, watching, refusing to be the first one to reach out, not because she's playing games, but because pride, uncertainty, and fear of rejection affect everyone. Think about it. How many people have wanted to contact someone but talk themselves out of it? Probably more than we'd like to admit. The problem is that from the outside, both situations look exactly the same. Silence looks like silence. This is why assumptions can be dangerous. The human mind hates uncertainty, so it rushes to fill in the blanks. Usually, it creates stories that create even more confusion. The mature response is to accept that not every unanswered question has an immediate answer, because sometimes silence means closure, and sometimes silence means hesitation. But here's what's fascinating. Neither of those reactions reveals as much as what comes next. Because now we arrive at the behavior that reveals more than messages, social media, or silence ever could. And it's the one sign that tells the real story. Number 8, she reflects on the relationship. Finally, we arrive at the reaction that reveals the most. Not a text message. It's not a social media view. Not a random hey. Reflection. Because when communication stops, something interesting happens. The noise disappears. The daily conversations disappear. The constant updates disappear. The distractions disappear. And suddenly, she's left alone with her thoughts. Now, before anyone imagines dramatic movie scenes with sad music playing in the background, that's not necessarily what happens. Reflection is usually much quieter than that. It's simply the moment when a person starts evaluating, how did I actually feel around him? What did I enjoy? What annoyed me? What did I appreciate? What was I taking for granted? And perhaps most importantly, do I miss the person, or do I just miss the attention? That's a question many people never ask themselves until distance forces them to. Because when someone is always available, it's easy to overlook their value. Human nature works that way. People often notice the importance of something only after it becomes less accessible. It's why we ignore our phone battery all day and suddenly become very emotional when it's sitting at 1%. Distance has a strange ability to create clarity. Things that once felt confusing start making sense. Feelings become easier to identify. Patterns become easier to recognize. And sometimes she realizes she genuinely enjoyed having you in her life. Other times, she realizes the connection wasn't as strong as she thought. Both conclusions are valuable, because both are honest, and honesty is far more useful than uncertainty. This is why reflection matters more than any message, post, or reaction, because it often determines what happens next. Will she reach out? Will she move on? Will the connection grow stronger? Or will it quietly fade away? The answer is usually found during this period of reflection. That's why this final reaction reveals more than all the others combined. Conclusion. So what have we learned today? Perhaps the biggest mistake many men make is believing that stopping contact is some kind of secret strategy, a magic trick, a relationship cheat code. It's a mysterious button that instantly makes someone miss you. Life rarely works that way. People are not vending machines. You don't press a button and receive affection 5 seconds later. The real value of stepping back has nothing to do with manipulation. It has everything to do with revelation. Whenever communication stops, the truth often becomes easier to see. When you're constantly texting, calling, checking, and chasing, it's difficult to know where you truly stand. Everything becomes noisy, confusing, unclear. But when the noise disappears, priorities begin to reveal themselves. Some people move closer. Some become more curious. Some realize they genuinely value the connection. And yes, some quietly move on. That's simply part of life. The funny thing is that many people spend months searching for answers while accidentally avoiding the one thing that provides them: space. Because space has a remarkable way of exposing reality. It shows who reaches out, who reflects, who values the connection, and who was never as invested as you hoped. Now, that truth isn't always comfortable, but it is valuable, because a difficult truth is still better than a comforting illusion. At least then you know where you stand, and when you know where you stand, you can move forward with confidence instead of confusion. So if there's one thing to remember from today's video, it's this: stop chasing answers from people. Pay attention to their actions. Actions have a funny habit of telling the truth. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And let me know in the comments, what was the most surprising reaction you've ever seen when someone stopped contacting another person? As always, thank you for watching The Elegant Standard, and I'll see you in the next video.